Okay, good evening. This is the Village of Vernon Hills Planning and Zoning Commission. We need to start with a roll call.
Chairman Morris.
Here.
Mr. Ballou.
Present.
Ms. Cotton.
Here.
Mr. Hesner.
Here.
Mr. Heidner.
Here.
Mr. Mulcrone.
Here.
Mr. Gorog.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay. The first matter on our agenda this evening is case 1308, a petition filed by Adam Arnold, South Bay Partners, requesting pursuant to the Village Code of Ordinances, 1, approval to amend the zoning district map to rezone the property at 530, that's not the right property. What's the address? At the west side of Milwaukee Avenue between North and South Woodbine and Vernon Hills from Office Research and Development District to R7 Multifamily District. Secondly, the approval of a special use permit to allow development of an assisted living facility for the care of patients with Alzheimer's dementia. 3, preliminary and final site and landscape plan approvals. And 4, preliminary and final approval of architectural elevations. Okay, who's going to speak today on behalf of the petitioner? Okay. The primary rule is that you need to speak from one of the microphones, either the permanent ones or the handheld.
These guys.
That would be the permanent ones, yes.
Okay.
Handheld's next to you, right.
Okay. And you guys will let me know when I cannot be heard.
We'll try.
Awesome.
Okay, and you are.
All right. I am Adam Arnold. I'm with South Bay.
Okay, is anyone going to also testify or speak on behalf of this petition with you?
I'm going to go through a presentation that we've put together to give everybody kind of a feel for the project, the landscaping, the layout, the elevations of the building itself. And then I believe there's going to be questions, at which point we've got our architect, our landscape architect, our civil engineer, and our construction group.
Okay, why don't we, for the purposes of a public hearing, whoever may speak on your behalf, if they can come up, identify themselves, and we'll swear everybody in at once?
As they speak?
No, now.
Okay. We have Bill Cusson with Hager. Well, everybody introduce themselves.
Good idea.
Bill Cusson with Hager Engineering.
Dave DeStore with Jensen and Halstead Architects.
Rich Olson with Gary R. Weber Associates, Landscape Architect.
And Charles Hall Construction.
Okay, so anyone who may testify on behalf of the petition, we ask at this point if you can raise your right hand, and we ask that you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this commission of the Village of Vernon Hills shall be the truth. Okay.
I do.
Okay, you are on, Mr. Arnold.
All right. So first and foremost, South Bay Partners is a senior housing developer. Charles Hall Construction is the construction group that builds all of our Illinois facilities and others. We've been in business doing this for the last 20 years or so. We've built 21 memory care facilities to date. This one will 11 of those in Illinois. This facility will be operated by a group called the JEA. They operate 47 facilities throughout the nation, 45 memory care facilities. So that will be the operator of the Springs at Vernon Hills. Going kind of quickly through some engineering drawings to give you a feel for how the site will orient on Milwaukee Avenue between North and South Woodbine, the preliminary plat, a site exhibit of how the parking, detention, and orientation of the property will operate.
Use the arrow.
Okay. All right. Okay. Milwaukee Avenue, North Woodbine, the Walter Smith Furniture Store, South Woodbine. Woodbine Circle makes a loop back through here that is residential. That's not part of the Village of Vernon Hills. And then the front of the building, the porte-cochere. This is our tree survey. We'll talk in detail a little more, show you what the site landscaping will look like. It's going to look like $1 million. Tree preservation exhibit. We've done our best to, it's a wooded area right now. We've done our best to preserve the big trees and then go back and do some backfill of that. But this is our tree preservation exhibit, saving some of the big oak trees on the site. This is probably a better representation because the end result is really what everybody's going to be most interested in. It's a big 6.6 acre site, way bigger really than a building of this size needs. And so we've kind of included what the village has described as a park-like setting with the detentions north and south. Again, Milwaukee Avenue being the eastern boundary, South Woodbine, North Woodbine being the north and south boundaries there. All access points, or rather both access points being North Woodbine and South Woodbine with no direct access off of Milwaukee Avenue. Monument signs on the corners here, landscaped very well, again with the tree line along the front of Milwaukee Avenue. Really over landscaped, does a really good job of keeping the site very green, very aesthetic. Stormwater, just so that you see that the site is served, all water drains very well from the site. More the same, sanitary sewer, site is utility served. Front elevations to the building. This is what was submitted for planning and zoning. We'd asked to do a little more detail. David, can I get you to do a little more detail on what was presented versus what was asked for?
Yeah, we received an email yesterday with a few comments regarding the elevations. The changes that were made, if you look on the front here, we had kind of the materials on the front porte-cochere mimicked the siding that was down here. The dormers were thought to be a little bit small and tacked on. And what we did is went back through, and one other piece was the little octagonal pieces in there. So we've gone back through, re-looked at those front elevations, kind of came up with a change to the fronts to give it a little more detail. Coming up, doing a shake to break up the masses. Doing a little two-story piece up here again with the cedar shake, different color, breaking up the masses within there, and going to a nice crossbeam detail within the gables, and then mimicking that same type of detail at that front porte-cochere up in here. And if we go forward, we've done a similar building down in Texas. To give you an idea, that front facade is not as flat as it looks on those 2D drawings. There is some good three-dimensionality coming out at the porte-cochere, at the dormers, and at the bump outs, where we actually pull the rooms out on the floor plan, going through there. And anything else you want to add?
Not yet, I'm sure there'll be some questions.
Okay. You want to talk about the floor plan, or you want me to do that?
Go ahead and talk about the floor.
Okay. We've done a number of the dementia Alzheimer's facilities, especially for South Bay. Number of coming in common areas that are for use of the residents throughout there. This is their home in addition to where they're being cared for. So the emphasis on the care in these facilities is to make it like their home. You don't want them in their rooms all day long. You want them out. You want them socialized. That is the best way for them they'll never heal, but the quality of life going through. And with South Bay, they like to do extra wide corridors throughout the facility and just make it as home-like as possible within.
One of the things I might add, because I know it was a concern, is and I touched on it in regards to access points on North and South Woodbine, is the impact in traffic that this kind of facility would bring to the neighborhood. Our residents are Alzheimer's dementia care folks. They live 24/7, almost 365 in this facility and do not operate vehicles. So the whole purpose behind the rezoning is to accommodate a residential density that isn't currently able to accommodate, but there isn't any kind of, it's a decrease in traffic patterns. At peak, our facility is staffed with 26 staffers. So, and again, it's because they live there 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It is staffed every day of the year as well. 3 shifts, peak shift being 26 staffers on site. The only people who come and go really from our facility are the staffers and the residents' families. Parking is adhered to in the guidelines that we've been given. The equation works out to where 28 spots are required. I believe it is 2 spots for every 1 resident, and then 2 spots for every, 1 spot for every 2 caregivers, which works out to an equation of 48. We're currently planned for 50, but that gives you a feel for how much parking and consequently traffic really isn't a portion of the site. No traffic, ingress, egress off of, I might go back to illustrate this. No access, not use the sanitary sewer for that exhibit. This is much prettier. No access off of Milwaukee Avenue. Again, it's all off of either North or South Woodbine. Parking around the site there. Then a rendering of what those monument signs, again, at Woodbine North and South along Milwaukee Avenue is what the monument sign would look like. John, what am I not answering for you guys? Lighting?
Good evening. Again, Charles Hall Construction. We produced a photometric plan. I didn't realize it needed to be a part of this presentation, but we submitted it and it was reviewed and approved. Low density lighting, we're looking for our dark sky lighting. It'll be, we'll look to shelter our neighbors and have no glare leaving the site.
Just a follow-up comment. Staff has looked at those plans, and there's some refinement that need to be done to them, but we don't have any issues with regards to the lighting of the site. They're pulling it up adjacent to the drive aisles, not going to the property lines, and at the property lines it'll be 0. So from that standpoint, that's in compliance with the zoning ordinance requirements. You want to touch on the tree preservation plan in a little bit more detail. Also talk a little bit about the fencing along what would be the west property line, and also confirm that there's a sidewalk along the front of the property.
And while you're at it, touch upon deliveries and, how the thing functions on a day-to-day level.
Okay. Maybe that's a better question for me. We'll let Rich talk a little more about the landscape plan. Rich, you're here to talk about the landscape plan.
Sure thing. Again, Rich Olson with Gary R. Weber Associates. We put together the landscape plan. As it relates to the tree preservation plan, all the quality trees of 6 inches or better were surveyed and inventoried. And as it relates to the site plan, if you look at the plan, we distinctly took 3 preservation areas on the site where there were quality trees to be preserved. One is to the south of the site where the detention pond is, along South Woodbine. There's also an area to the center of the site, which is, there's a cutout that's also depicted on the landscape plan as a preservation area. as well as the third prominent area to the north along North Woodbine. Around the detention basin, there is several trees there that we're proposing to preserve. And the ones to the north are very high quality. They tend to be the oaks on the site. And from a landscape standpoint, and we worked this through staff, what we're proposing to do is to go into these areas and really take the approach of getting rid of all the invasive, all the poor quality trees, stuff that's really not going to allow the oak trees to thrive, and clean those out. And underneath the canopy of the preserved trees, we're going to come in and plant native grass underneath those canopy areas, as well as working it out with staff's recommendation. We're going to add oak trees clusters to each one of these areas. So we're going to go in and add several to these locations. Now there is a couple of trees that are also outside of those areas that were designated as preservation areas because they were identified as good quality trees, and you can see them on the plan. To the south, the blue detention area, you can actually see there appears to be sort of a thumb or an indent area. There's one really nice tree where we contoured the detention pond around to save that specific tree. Oh, here we go, right in this area here. This is that south area that I was talking about. So this area right here is the preservation of the trees in this area, and then this particular one was identified as a nice quality tree that we worked around the detention area. Up in the north area, the same thing occurred. The detention pond was specifically designed to try and take into account that we've got quality oak trees right in this area that we really want to preserve, as well as this singular oak tree right here, which is a really nice quality specimen. And then there's also a spot here adjacent to the residential to the west that we are definitely going to save some trees in that area too. So along with the preservation of the trees, as well as the extensive amount of landscaping that we're coming back into and adding quality plantings along the perimeter with the parkway trees, along the residential side, we're coming in with buffering plantings, which is a combination of the ornamental trees, the evergreen trees, and shade trees to help with that, along with a fence along the residential side, which extends all along this property boundary line and all the way along to the entrance area. And then further...
What type of fence is that?
What kind of
What type of fence?
It would be a solid fence, solid 6-foot fence. And then further,
What's the material of the fence?
wood.
Is it going to be painted, stained?
It'll be a
asphalt?
cedar wood fence. So it's a natural, it grays out over time. If they choose to, they can stain it. I don't think we've actually set whether it's a dog-eared or straight top. That's really something that we can, in final detail, we can certainly, if it's desired to be a flat top, that'd be fine too. So just giving you a little, along with the exterior buffer plantings that are added to these preservation areas, we've also added in ornamental trees along the exterior to help even further define those areas and add more landscaping, as well as the detention areas. We've integrated these preservation areas with native grasses underneath it and have extended that native prairie around the detention basins. Per the requirements, there's a native design to the detention basins, which we are incorporating in the overall design on both detention ponds, which is a series of native grasses down to the water's edge. You incorporate an emergent zone plantings, and it allows for less maintenance over time. And then we've also added an extensive amount of landscaping to the foundations of the buildings, which they're really meant to complement the architecture. I know we showed the architecture before, but if you can think of it in terms of not only the architecture the building's going to add to it, but we've also added another layer of landscaping to the building, which actually complements those voids in the architecture where there's no windows and things of that nature. So that really enhances those facades as well. And then finally, we've there's a very unique or really nice concept for the interior courtyard which we've developed, which is a very nice enhancement to the residents that will be living there. It's a walkway system that's planted on the exterior around the entire border of the courtyard, which defines this central green space. And that central green space also has a walkway that runs through it, which has several design landscape elements built into it. There's some planter areas with flower gardens. There's also some decorative paver designs, which give you some unique textures as you're walking along there. There's also 2 rain gardens that are incorporated in there, which take the stormwater off the buildings and incorporate that into a nice design. And this walkway leads to a central outdoor seating area that they can use. So this is it's a very nice interior courtyard kind of oasis. Any other questions on the?
Yeah, how are they going to get equipment in there to maintain that?
The interiors of those?
The courtyard?
The courtyard? Well, they'll install it, but generally speaking, they can go in and do all the pruning they need by just accessing the service areas to the building.
We actually have an exterior.
You need to use the microphone.
There's also a storage room off of that courtyard where they can store some of the equipment for that also. So it's easy to maintain.
What's the large paved area to the north of the building?
I'll do that. You're talking about this spot right here? And I think this begins to address your question too, how the building functions. And I want to use this slide for exterior, and then we'll talk about interior as well. So this is a 24/7 facility, so all the residents' needs are taken care of. This building is more or less designed so that the front screens the service area to the back. So this is a motor court, for lack of a better word, where deliveries are made, trash is picked up, grease traps are cleaned, etc. Food truck services the building once or twice a week, ballpark, depending on needs and orders and those kinds of things. Talk about the functionality of the inside of the building as well. So this is that area you're talking about here. All of the service portion of the building, really the residents' rooms ring the building on the outside and then along the inside, and then Rich's courtyard, as he was describing it, inside as we were talking about just a moment ago. This motor corridor where the food truck service equipment would come from, all services these doors back here, screened by from the front of the building, this being Milwaukee, right along here. Food truck, etc., services the kitchen and storage rooms through here, again, once or twice a week.
And what type of trucks would those be?
Small food service trucks, so not 18-wheelers, panel trucks, etc.
And you need that big of an area to service those types of vehicles?
Yes, sir.
What about emergency vehicles? Where will emergency vehicles come to?
Porte-cochere, right up
From the
front.
front door?
Yes.
That delivery area, is it a typical dock-like, or is it just ground level?
It's all flat, ground level, concrete paving, 8.0 doors.
Is the access to the site primarily off North Woodbine?
Right. The most logical Yes, sir.
So what's the flow through the site if you come, either as an employee, a visitor, or even a delivery? I guess all three.
With all probability, you come in through the north, park along the front or along the back, leave out of South Woodbine, turning right.
So are those one-way drives then, in and out?
They're
on the
they're
south?
two-way drives.
On the south as well?
Mhm.
They're two-way, it looks like a right in, right out on the south.
All two-way drives, correct, Bill? No. South is right only. I apologize.
Bill Cusson with Hager Engineering. All drives are two-way drives, so you can get in and out them. South Woodbine Drive will be restricted to a left-out only. There will be no right turns out onto South Woodbine Drive. Up here at North Woodbine Drive, the exit is going to be restricted to right turns so that no one's turning left going around the loop for any reason. We have in the packet, there should be some turning templates for the fire department, which we worked with the fire department on that. But the intent, the reason this south drive looks a little weird is to try and deter people from making a right turn onto South Woodbine Drive.
So, can you say that one more time? This is a left out only?
That's correct. There will be a
left
sign there.
out from South Woodbine Drive?
Yes.
No,
Left
south.
out to South
South.
Woodbine Drive.
From the site. From the site, right?
Oh, from the site,
Yeah, correct.
but Woodbine Circle onto Milwaukee is a right in, right out?
Yes, that's a right in, right out.
Okay, okay.
Is there any traffic directional signage to get visitors or emergency vehicles to the front of the building from the two access points?
You can make
We
go in here.
have you had to do that?
What is this sign for?
I mean, it's not something
If you're coming.
we've done. I don't know if it's a big issue that it could or couldn't be done.
I'm just looking at it, and if I were coming in from the north, my inclination is to go right into that large paved area towards the docks and not know to go all the way around to the front.
Again, Charles Hall Construction. We actually will spend a great deal of time with the fire department and the fire chief during construction. They'll tour the building. They'll actually do practice runs before we open. So they'll be well-versed in access points into the building, depending on the emergency.
Okay. No. No, I was just wondering about visitors. You know, how do they know where to park?
From a functionality standpoint, it becomes more obvious looking at these this is the front of the building. It looks like the front of the building. That service court in the back, it isn't welcoming. It isn't, you wouldn't be tempted to park there. It looks like a service entrance.
But that's what you drive into.
Say again?
That's what you drive into from North Woodbine.
Correct.
And the elevations look remarkably similar. So I think it would probably be as welcoming.
It's a flat facade on the back. It does not look like
It's
you would,
hideous,
it does not.
right?
Say again?
Is it hideous or?
It isn't hideous. It's the same materials, it's the same finish, but it doesn't have the relief. It doesn't have a front door. It's a
Service entrance.
It's a flat service entrance.
Whereas this one actually has a little more relief than some of the other ones. But on this one, you know, the front entry says front entry, you got the portico to go in. And on the back side, there is like a small canopy there, but it's more the kitchen entrance, so there's small doors. It's not as welcoming. The materials and finishes are the same all the way around the building, so from that respect, you know, it does it, but it doesn't say front entry.
Can you go to the new architecture slide, please? Like, That one's fine. I do like the richer colors, the articulation of the gables with the new bracket detail. I'm not so sure that the new popped-up dormer, well, it's basically a two-story element, is successful. Maybe you could work on something a little less dominant. Maybe play with the fenestration patterns. It seems to be very repetitive across 450 feet. It's just double windows all the way along. Maybe there's opportunities to do paired singles or a triple or a 2-3-2 combo, something to break up the rhythm a little bit. If you could go back to the slide from Texas. On this one, you can see how you've popped the gable elements up through the voids, not above the windows. I think that's a little bit more successful.
Okay. We can take a look at that, certainly.
Other than the fact that when it comes to signs, everyone wants more than less, what is the logic of the sign on the south portion if you can't turn in off Milwaukee there? But you're already gone by an entrance, in case you missed it.
Yeah, you can still make, if you're going southbound on Milwaukee, you can still make the right.
Yeah, but you passed an entrance already, so this is for the people that have missed it. But if you're
Correct.
going northbound, it serves,
Really, no purpose other than to flag that, hey, this is the building you're going for. So I think it does have some value there.
okay, so this falls in that 2 is better than 1
Yes.
theory? Okay.
Yes. We had a lot of discussions about
Fair
that,
enough.
whether to go for 1 or 2. And
Fair enough. Okay. Okay. There was a comment in the staff report regarding the lighting under the canopy. Is the lighting under the canopy all flush mount?
Yes.
Okay, and that's going to be true whatever ends up back by the loading area as well?
Yeah, typically by the loading area, we do have a covered area there, and everything's just recessed can lighting.
Okay, so it's recessed as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Are there any, I know your neighbors aren't literally right at the property line, but when you look especially at the south kind of road that rings the building, if you go out of that, where did these lights go, and are they blocked from if you're driving a car, are headlights blocked from the adjoining residential neighborhood?
There is a 6-foot fence there, so
Okay.
that should block most everything.
Oh, so the fence also goes to the south?
I believe so, yes.
I'm sorry.
As you're pulling out of that drive, you're talking about across Woodbine there?
Yeah, no, I'm
You're
talking,
talking right here, right?
right, yes.
That fence runs the length.
I'm sorry, maybe I just misunderstood. I thought the fence just went north.
Charles Hall Construction. Currently, the fence is proposed to this point here. If there's a concern, we looked at it. We talked about having that fence extend to the property line. It didn't get drawn. If it's the wish of the village for us to do that, we're happy to do it.
Okay, maybe we can just step back. Can you then show us where is the extent of the fence?
It'll start up here,
At the north property line?
correct.
Okay,
Extend to here, come in, down, over, and it currently has it planned to stop there. Because we were thinking, as traffic comes through, any turning movements related to this parking would be casting the most light, so we brought the fence to here. This traffic heading this way, the headlights would primarily be casted towards South Woodbine, away from the residents here.
but if you're exiting around the building from the east to the west, right,
Good point.
okay, and if you're also, somehow or other you figured out how to get in on South Woodbine, the way that curve is you kind of go back to the left on it, the one that's a little bit further south. I don't know where those lights are going to go, so it seems to me.
We're happy to provide this fence all the way through, Mr. Morris.
Okay.
And the question was asked earlier, it's not reflected in this landscape plan, but we are extending a sidewalk from north to South Woodbine.
Okay. You have an interesting single sole tree at I guess it's the northwest corner of the building by that loading area.
This one here?
Yeah. What are the odds of that one surviving?
Pretty good, actually. We're going to have to take some pretty good care. We will be doing a trench foundation, so the extent of our excavation won't be that wide. And I think we can get past it and be able to keep it. It's a nice tree, and we're going to do our best to make it last.
So it's kind of like on this little peninsula that
Yeah.
seems to come off? Okay.
Right. We took the request literally to save as many trees as we could.
Okay, anybody else? Anything else you'd like to add? Oh, I'm
Are
sorry.
there any, as far as setbacks requirements on the west end, I guess it is,
Mm-hmm.
they meet all those?
Yes, they do. Yeah, the only comment I would make associated with that is that the enclosure that was shown on there, I think, did not anticipate the generator. You guys are putting a generator in that area. That there's an enclosure that will go around that, and as you note in the packet, we'll have to work on an exercise schedule for that generator so that it minimizes the impact on adjacent properties.
Can you use your arrow and show where that is? What John just was just talking about.
The generator and the dumpster will be located in this location right here. And we are aware and have had conversations related to the exercise of that generator and keeping the area clean.
Is that going to be natural gas?
We haven't made, it's typically natural gas. We haven't made that final decision, so it'll be diesel. Excuse me, Dave Dister, the architect. It'll be diesel.
Anything else you want to add? Okay, I have a question. In the conditions of approval that were suggested by staff, there's a condition 5 that says or reads, "The intent of the rezoning is to only allow the Springs of Vernon Hills Assisted Living Facility at this location. If the Springs of Vernon Hills fails to begin construction per paragraph 6, and it goes on with some timeframes. I'm a little confused as to who the Springs of Vernon Hills is with respect to this condition. Is it the operator? Is it, I guess, South Bay as the developer of this? Or is it some sort of joint venture between South Bay and it sounds like, and I apologize now.
JEA.
Yes, right.
JEA is
Right.
the operator.
So
The
who-
Springs at Vernon Hills is the facility. We will have, like any development, South Bay will control it, will own it, will be a equity partner in the Springs of Vernon Hills.
Is the intent, John, that it would be just the facility, or are we talking about these operators in condition 5?
The intent of this is to make sure that it gets constructed. Now, by whom is not necessarily defined in this condition. So if South Bay or Hall Construction or whomever, the intent here is that it doesn't languish for a period of time. They have to either build it or it lapses and goes back to the OR&D.
Can it just be stated that if it's not built within a certain time, it expires?
That's the way we read it.
Yeah, that's-
Construction must
yeah.
start with, basically, construction must
Regardless
start
of-
within 6
Yeah.
months and be finished
Absolutely.
within 2 years.
Yep. And now, that's the intent of this condition, so yes.
But there still is an opportunity for that time period to be extended if need be,
Correct.
so. I mean,
We're
sometimes
comfortable-
things don't happen within 6 months.
And we appreciate the latitude if necessary, but we're comfortable with the timeline.
Yeah, it's hard.
These conditions are similar to what we applied to autumn leaves, so and that was successful, as you can see, so we kind of mirrored those same conditions.
Speaking of autumn leaves, what is the occupancy rate there? Are you aware?
My understanding is very high, so.
I'd like to make a comment on the generator. With regard to exercising that generator, because you're adjacent to some residential properties, you may want to exercise that generator during the middle of the day, when most people are gone or when it's high activity. And I suppose you're going to do that once a week. So try to keep it during the middle of the day if you can.
We would want to, for the plain and simple fact that our residents would want to adhere to the same kind of schedule, our neighbors would, we would adhere to that.
Okay, I note that notices were sent out, and there's a note in our packet that, quote, "A representative from Autumn Leaves called and expressed concerns about having another service provider in the area."
Mhm.
Do we have anything else other than that?
That's it.
Okay, what's the demand for this facility then? Because that's the implicit portion of this question, is that there may not be demand.
It's a great question, and obviously we wouldn't be interested in the market if we didn't think that a facility like this would sustain itself. We look at a lot of, like all of our competitors do, we look at a lot of different factors as we evaluate demand. What income for a market looks like within a certain radius, both for resident-aged folks as well as what were called adult children, people who are 46 to 64 who can help accommodate basically mom and dad's care and the financial burden that comes along with it. So competitors generally look at those demographics for a private pay facility like this along the same lines. Demand in our market, what we consider inside of our ring, is about twice what is actually being served with the inclusion of these 70 units. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So including these 70, there's about twice as much demand in the market for a private pay facility as actually being served.
And this is all private pay? It's not government?
All private pay, that's correct.
Okay. Okay, anybody else? Okay, anything you want to add at this point?
I'd love to answer any questions. They've all been good to, to date, or to this point. Any questions we can add, we'd love to answer them for you.
All right, okay, this is a public hearing, so as a result of that, what we'd ask if anyone from the public wants to comment with respect to any aspect of this request, we can take comment now. What we ask is that if you give public comment, you have to speak from the microphone, and if you can identify yourself for the record. Okay, Mr. Robbins.
My name is Bruce Robbins, and I live at 425 Benjamin Drive, Unit 501 in Vernon Hills, and I'm the president of the River's Edge of Vernon Hills Condominium Association. Have a few questions, a few concerns. Made a few notes. My first concern is do we really need a facility like this? This is going to be a 40,000 square foot building, 75 or so beds. Right down the street on Deer Path is a 20,000 square foot facility with, I think, 45 beds, and it's not that far from here. I'm concerned, do we need this? I'm concerned on the 40,000 square foot size of the building. The furniture store across the street is 20,000 square feet to a floor, and this is going to be double that. I'm concerned on the setback of the building and the facility from Milwaukee. What am I going to see? From our condominium building, what are we going to see? What kind of landscaping am I going to see? What kind of building am I going to see from our condominium? I'm concerned on that, how far the setback is. I'm also concerned, are there any signs? I mentioned 2 signs each on North and South Woodbine, but I'm concerned, are there any signs going to be on Milwaukee that we're going to be seeing from our building? And I'm also concerned about the operator, who's going to operate this. I pulled off their website, the South Bay Partners Limited, and something that concerned me. It says, South Bay has delivered consistent and real returns to our investors over the course of our development program. While our intent is to not operate as a merchant builder, eventually we accumulate a critical mass of assets that become attractive to large institutions and result in the bulk sale of such assets. Specifically, we have sold a group of 9 Alzheimer buildings to a REIT that resulted in a return over a 6-year investment period. They mentioned that they are going to be equity owners in this, and I'm just concerned that this facility is going to be like that they're going to accumulate these and then try to sell it to a large investment group, and then what happens to the building? What happens to the operation? And these are my concerns.
Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Richard Smolinski. I'm living in 16300 Woodbine Circle. So it's exactly next to this project. So the generator is exactly end of my property, so next to mine. So this is line, this is the generator. My house is here. Another thing, the emergency vehicle, they come and they're using the ambulance, they're using the sirens, or what time they come and delivery coming through, because all big traffic be coming to my side of the house. So I want to know explanation, because I'm the first guy. Every traffic going to next to my window. And another thing, the cross the street was Walter with furniture fence is like, I think it's 10, right? 10. So not 6, I'm 6'3". Thank you.
Okay. One question. Are you the property that is
Yeah.
off, wait, off North Woodbine?
Yeah, no.
So if we're looking
First
at
one,
this,
yeah, first one, 16.
it's the one you can kind
Yeah,
of see?
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. 6, I'm 6'3". So if you come over my property, you see what I'm talking about.
Okay. Yes? Okay. Oh,
Hi, Matt Plock. I live right next to Richard on the north side. So one of the concerns I have, in the wintertime, you have delivery trucks that might be running, or even in the summertime to keep them cool. So the fumes, I have a concern about the fumes from the delivery trucks, how long they sit in there for. Not sure. Just a concern that I have. And then the delivery time. A lot of times things are delivered early based on the delivery businesses. If they're coming in at 3, 4, 5 in the morning. So that would be a concern. The dumpsters, is there any way we can get them fenced in? Just to. Okay,
No.
great, thank you. And then just, I have a concern from the traffic standpoint, because the only way to go northbound is on the north side of Woodbine Circle. It's the only way to go northbound on Milwaukee Avenue. So you have the residents, you have the workers and family members, you have Walter E. Smith. That's a lot of traffic going left on Milwaukee Avenue. I'm not sure when shift changes are, but if it's anywhere between, let's say, 4:30 and 6:30, there's going to be a long line of cars getting out of that parking lot, along with neighbors trying to get out going northbound. A light isn't going to be, I mean, you got a light there and you got a light there, so that is, and we do believe when Walter E. Smith, I think they do have a 10-foot fence. It might be worth, I'm not sure, but we're
Yeah,
pretty sure it is.
I think there's a berm that's along there that helps enhance
be.
the height of it, so, but I don't believe it's 10, I think it's berm plus 6 or 8 feet, so, something.
It might be worth
Yeah.
considering that, just raising it even, because Richard's going to be looking over. He's the tall guy. So, thank you.
okay, thank you.
My name is Leslie Bruce Smith. I live at 16009 West Woodbine. We've been there for 22 years, and I guess we always knew that at some point that property was going to get developed. My concern is both as a resident of the community and also as a professional arborist. I'm an ISA certified arborist who specializes in tree preservation. And I wish I had money for all the sites that I've seen where contractors promise to save the trees, and then we get called in a year or two later when they're dying. And so I would like to have a little bit more outlined on exactly what's going to be done to preserve the trees. The idea of putting native grasses underneath is great, but that site right now is covered with really dense buckthorn. So how that's going to be removed without disturbing the existing roots of those 200-year-old bur oaks that are on the north end of the property especially. So, is any kind of tree growth regulator going to be used on the trees, and what kind of long-term maintenance? The other concern that I have is all of us that live on Woodbine Circle know that the water runs from west to east to the Des Plaines River watershed. And drainage changes on the south end are going to be an issue if they're not carefully thought through. So properties that didn't flood before might now, and the trees are also extremely susceptible to drainage changes. So those are all things that I'd like to just bring to everybody's attention so that it can be thought through and carefully ameliorated. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name is Bill Seitz, and didn't get a chance to, my mother lives across the street in River's Edge, but I am familiar with, and actually I have a letter with my comments on thoughts on this, but my father has Alzheimer's, so I'm very familiar with Alzheimer's treatment facilities in this area, and I do think that there is a market for this type of a project. And I do think that that this type of project can succeed in Vernon Hills. My thoughts were, and rather than just go through a letter, just my high points. In looking at the site, I think to me it's a narrow site. And the one thing that I would say relative to other Alzheimer's facilities that I have seen is this one is off a major road. The other ones they're near a major road, but they're not on a major road. And the sort of the points I had about this without knowing what these plans were, as far as the footprint, I think it's a narrow site. I think it's a wide site, a long site, but I think it's a narrow site. So you're forced to put detention ponds on north and south of the property. And I think that, if it were an ideal world, a facility like this is best a little bit down the road off a major street. But you can't you got to go with the property that's available to build. The one thing that I wasn't certain about, and the presentation here did answer my question relative to the safety issue. These facilities are intended for the residents, and my father may be a resident of this facility down the road. These facilities are intended for the residents to remain in the facility. But I would encourage you to make certain that you have a site plan with where if somebody does get off the property, where you have I heard discussion of a wood fence, have a fence that is nice to look at, but also preserves the possibility that somebody could walk out of one of these facilities. And so the issue of a fencing, that's something you're going to have to decide as far as what you think is appropriate for your community, but I would suggest that you look into that seriously. The sidewalk completion, from what, it's not in this thing, but from what I understand, that's something you're going to do. That's one area along Milwaukee Avenue on the west side that doesn't have the completed sidewalk. Well, you now have the possibility, if you do it right, of a full sidewalk for the corporate community and everybody on the west side of that road to walk down Milwaukee Avenue, which would be a nice enhancement to the site. The only other thing that I would say is I personally, when hear discussion of, and I live in Glenview, so every time I come to my parents' place, this issue of right turn here, no right turn, all these cutouts you got there, to me, I know you have two lights just south of there, Corporate Woods, and then you have another one, two in succession, and then further down the road, you've got one where that directory business, I forget the name of it, has a site. You've got a gap there, and unfortunately, the way it is that road bends a little bit and it rises a little bit. And what ends up happening is, the police do try to control the traffic. But unfortunately, you do have a problem with the flow of traffic and speeding of, it's a major road. So to me, I think that the one thing you ought to consider on a property like this is you got to break the flow of traffic. And to me, the only way to do that is to put a light. Now, in my letter to you, I suggested that this be, for ambulances and emergency vehicles, be accessed off Milwaukee Avenue. It looks like the site, as this plan is designed, it's going to be off Woodbine. Well, if you're going to put it off Woodbine, I suggest you put some sort of major way for the people to get in and out. To me, it's crazy to have signage and things for people that can't make turns. I see that, all the time, people making left turns in the River's Edge from going south. So, I would encourage that you perhaps use this as an opportunity to rectify that sort of situation and not have a disjunted traffic pattern, which I think you're going to get. And I think that, the traffic, well, we're only going to have 26 people there. We're going to have a few trucks, this or that. Well, you know what? I personally think that it's going to be more than that because you have other facilities and other businesses and people in that area. So I would encourage you that you consider that, and that's really all the thoughts I have. But I think the idea is a good idea. But I do think that on the fencing, on the security, on the traffic, I think there's work to be done. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I live on 15756 Woodbine on the south entrance. The only thing they mentioned about, I work in the hotel
You have
industry.
to identify yourself, please. Your name.
Oh, Karen Longobardi.
You're on TV.
I work in a hotel, and there are no small trucks for food delivery. Cisco trucks are all 18-footers. Any kind of beverage truck is huge. And the only thing I'm concerned about is, like he said, the access codes, because they are kind of set far back, and those big trucks coming in, and then having to go out, they're not going to be able to turn around. I don't know how big that parking lot is, but they are going to be big trucks, and big trucks make a lot of noise. They do come 6 a.m. till all day 4 o'clock. We have deliveries all day, large trucks. So that's just a concern. I think it's going to be a lovely facility after speaking to some of the gentlemen, but there are a few concerns. And the traffic, I'm sorry, the 2 lights that are put where they don't help us at all. They made it actually worse on South Woodbine when they put that V that you can only turn right and come in one way, because when you're turning in left, the traffic's flying and there's no cut-in, and I've almost been rear-ended several times because of that cut-in. And, it was easier to turn left out of Woodbine than it is on the other side on South Woodbine. It's much harder to turn left out of there than it used to be on South Woodbine. So it kind of messed that up, and I can see there's going to be a lot more traffic because both main entrances for Waltree Smith and the facility, everybody's going to be coming in that side. I don't think it's going to affect South Woodbine's traffic as much, but if it's only going to be, if people are going to think that they have to go out that way because they can only turn right that way, I just think the traffic situation's a little messed up. I think that needs to be looked at better.
And what time of day is the traffic the worst coming off of North?
Well,
from
8
North
o'clock
Woodbine?
it's between 7 and 9 in the morning when you're going to work, Monday through Friday, and then between 4 and 6:30. That's
4
really...
6:30 and 7 and 9 from North Woodbine onto Milwaukee.
Yeah, north and south. It's terrible. If you're trying to come into South Woodbine, that's where you have a problem because people are flying. And that little cut-in you made, people use that to try to go around people. So that whole new pattern that has been made is is kind of messed up, especially when the traffic from American Hotel Register starts coming out and you have people in a rush. They use that little side cutoff to try to get around slower they don't realize it ends. So I just think they need to relook at that whole traffic pattern.
Okay. Right. Anyone else?
Just a couple, oh, yes. Linda Plock. I'm at 16280 Woodbine, which is the north side and 2 in from this facility. And traffic, I would echo the problems there. We noticed too, along with all that, people from River's Edge condo kind of come in and do a little turnarounder thing, and drives me nuts sometimes. And I have 2 new teen drivers that I just have a high concern about that. Construction traffic, I didn't hear anyone talk about if there's going to be one point of access for construction traffic. Might that be better on the south end? Would be nice. I know that because significant amount of noise. I can't remember how close the resident is on the south end, but is there a way also for delivery trucks to not have to have their reversal beep, beep, beep sounds on? I don't know, probably not, I don't know, but I see you shaking your head. That's really so close to Richard's residence, where that whole build out, I don't know how to cushion for sound, but a 6-foot fence is not gonna do it. Okay.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So what we'll do is we'll close the public hearing portion of the meeting. Some of the questions and concerns that were asked or addressed by various area residents are probably worthwhile that you as the petitioner also have an opportunity to address. One that was echoed by many is just the more generic question of the timing of deliveries. Do you have any limitation on that? That's an operational question.
And I've done my best to take notes. I can address them as you guys pitch them out back at me.
Oh,
or
if
I
you want to go from the beginning, that's fine too.
Okay.
Okay.
And where I've missed them, if you guys want to bark them out or whatever procedure is, we can go from there. A good portion of, the neighborhood concerns will apply to our residents as well. Nobody wants to be woken up in the middle of the night. Nobody wants a beeping truck. We're talking about a facility that is designed for the care of people who have dementia. They're disoriented anyway, so we are trying to be as uninvasive, if that is a word, as possible. So in regards to traffic patterns, our shifts for those, again, 26 is a number that was thrown out and again was kind of seized upon. That's our peak shift. That would be the max number of caretakers is what the industry term is for them inside the facility. Shifts changes is probably the biggest portion on how to address that. Shifts are from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m., 7 p.m. to 3 p.m., then 3 p.m. to 11. So the shifts don't necessarily correspond with what would otherwise be a 9 to 5 day or a school day. So I think that part of the traffic pattern probably isn't as disruptive to the neighborhood or to the traffic patterns along Woodbine as what might otherwise be normal for a business practice. There was the concern about maintaining residents inside of the property. And again, we've built 21 of these facilities specifically for the care of Alzheimer's and memory, memory impaired residents. So one of the things that maybe that is worth touching on, there's a whole host of things that are very specific to the design and operation of these buildings. But one of the things that let me point out that I think will probably bring people ease as to how the building operates. The entire envelope is monitored so that in the event that a door is open, an alarm sounds. Not audible bells flashing and lights going off and those kinds of things, but the nursing station is alerted that this door has become open. Immediately, with 26 people throughout with beepers, they're alerted that, you know, this door is open. Just constantly mixed in with the residents anyway as part of the operation. So I know that door just opened, so I'll make sure that nobody's coming, you know, in or out, specifically out because you couldn't come in from the outside. But there is not a, Alzheimer's has a specific wandering concern that goes along with it. It's one of the characteristics of late stage dementia, and one of the things that we have to, as building designers, building developers, and our operators have to address. Which kind of leads me into another question, specifically, who owns this building? Who operates this building and who builds this building? And they're all intertwined pieces, and it's a very good question, especially today and the longevity of the project going forward. South Bay is the developer on the project, so we're the ones who petition you guys. We work with Charles Hall Construction, and Charles Hall in particular, to build and construct these buildings in Illinois. JEA is the operator of those buildings. As a equity partner in the buildings, yes, ultimately we may have the opportunity or desire or whatever down the road to sell these buildings. When those buildings have been sold, the operator, and that kind of third prong of the piece, has always stayed in place. So the Springs at Vernon Hills, in the event of a sale, would remain the Springs at Vernon Hills. JEA would remain the operator. Ownership, you know, would have the opportunity to change there.
Or what is JEA?
JEA, they're senior housing. They are an operator of senior housing facilities. That's all they do.
Okay. And are they here an operator for you, or are they a lessee?
They're an operator for us.
Okay, so it's not a lease arrangement?
It's an operations agreement.
A management agreement?
Mm-hmm. It is a management agreement, yes, sir.
Okay.
You said your equity partner. Is JEA the other equity partner? Or?
There's multiple equity partners in the deal. JEA may be an operator, it may be an equity partner as well.
He's forgetting his partner. I'll be an investor in this as well and an owner in it.
As will JEA, yeah. The service court was another question, and how to address that. This is a facility that at maximum capacity takes care of 70 residents. It is a pretty big building of people who are on average 83 years old. Food service is part of a 365, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week operation. Food deliveries come from, you know, 6-wheeled panel trucks. That court is designed to accommodate that kind of truck, a full-sized fire truck, and that's really, you know, who services that kind of entrance there. So, you know, that's what it's designed to do. Is what it's been designed to do in the other 21 buildings that we've built and operated that way. Ambulance and generator, you know, disrupting of the neighborhood. Exercising the generator kind of falls in line with, not only do we want to be respectful of the neighborhood, but that falls in line with being respectful of our residents as well. We don't want to exercise that generator when normal people are normally sleeping, when normal people are normally doing their business. That generator and trash is part of an enclosure. I apologize, it's not part of the display here, but it is part of what was presented to planning and zoning, and how that's going to be enclosed and hidden for all practical purposes. Unfortunately, I can't control, you know, when emergency vehicle may be needed or required, but they're going to be accessing the building through the front porte cochere.
What's your experience on emergency vehicle visits?
We are a licensed medical care facility. Most of what happens and needs to be taken care of happens within the walls of the facility. There are, obviously, with the care of elderly folks, things that we cannot account for, you know, on site. So it does happen some, but it is not a regular occurrence.
But are you limited to memory care? It's not a skilled nursing facility?
It is not a skilled nursing facility. Our residents, for the most part, spend end of life with us.
When there is an emergency, isn't it common for them to turn their siren off before entering the site?
We wouldn't, again, I think our concerns for our residents are much the same as the
That's why I was
concern for the
asking.
neighborhood. We don't want to create alarm or disrupt the lives of our residents anyway. That's probably a question more for, the emergency services than for us, but yes.
And one more question. You obviously have emergency exits. I'm assuming that they do have delays built in them, that if the bar is pushed, there will an alarm go off at a station, and there's like a 10 or 15-second delay before the door actually opens.
Correct.
So that would prevent someone from actually opening a door and walking out without someone knowing, with a chance to stop them. And do they wear ankle monitors that deactivate the doors also?
We have to be very respectful of our residents' privacy. We're not dehumanizing or institutionalizing anybody
Right.
here. So monitoring is as a private pay facility, it's just not something that anybody's going to, let me move into your facility so that I can be tracked. But yes, the doors are deterrent so that, I'm not encouraged or easily able to walk outside, but if I'm persistent, I can. If I do, then, then the nursing station is alerted, et cetera. Yes, very much along what you're thinking.
Okay, so what is your experience with emergency visits?
As necessary.
Well, you have to have some historical basis because you operate a lot of these. Are we talking about daily, multiple daily, once every month? What's the average going on?
More along the lines of once a month. When's the next time you're going to get sick? I mean, it's a hard thing to answer. We'll go months without having any kind of need for outside medical attention whatsoever. We'll have 3 deaths in a week.
Do you also have medical care on site, or do residents of the facility need to be transported for medical care? And I'm talking about hospitalization, I'm talking about routine medical care.
No, we have licensed nurses on staff.
Okay, but like
24 hours a day.
Et cetera.
Say again?
Doctors?
Doctor's visits, obviously, if you have a doctor's visit, you would go to the doctor's office. We do not have doctors come in to take care of residents, no.
And is that primarily by private ambulance or private medical car?
No, generally it's a family member who's coming to pick them up and take them to the doctor's office.
Okay.
Okay, working down my list so that I'm accommodating everybody's questions, I believe.
One more about the lighting around the properties. What kind of lighting do you use? The big one, like water pressure, or we just wake up 2 o'clock in the morning, it's like.
Okay. The question is, and you'll get to on your list, about commenting on the site lighting.
You want to talk about photometrics real quick?
The objective of the lighting and by the requirement of the village, I guess I should address you, sorry, is that we have no light exiting the site. So all of the light at the perimeter of the site, past the perimeter of the site, is 0. Within the site, it gradually increases around the building.
But one of the big concerns that we've had on this commission is that the photometric shows 0, but because of the way things are shielded, or perhaps not, there's substantial glare. So how does that addressed
in lighting design, downward lighting, we're able to manage and control the direction that the light is pointed so that it is in a downward facing direction. If there are particular concerns, we welcome the opportunity to work with staff to address any particular concerns, but the goal would be to downward face the light, 0 light at the perimeter, and if you're a neighbor looking in, those lights, there would be no lights facing out. That would.
So you don't
create
have
that
wall
glare.
packs in the building facing out, that kind of?
No, that was made clear, that we're not allowed to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Traffic increases and traffic patterns. The plain and simple truth of the matter, and one of the ladies was pointed out that ultimately the site gets developed, and I think this is probably low of impact thing that can happen as possible. Again, the shifts are such that they don't conflict with or designed almost to not conflict with a 9 to 5 type schedule. Yes, it is more, but we're talking about really traffic patterns that accommodate shift changes and familial visits on a regular basis. Incredibly minimal. Fencing height was a repetitive concern. So as we talked about, there's the berm. It is planned for a 6-foot fence. If it's determined that that's not high enough, that, that's something that's easily accommodated at a 10-foot level.
How high is the berm that the fence sits on? Right.
I don't know that. I don't have a grading plan. Do you know it off the top of your head?
Yeah.
There is, the berm they were talking about is on the adjacent
Right.
property.
Oh, okay.
Our fence will come from just above the parking level. We're proposing a 6-foot fence. If it would help with our neighbors, we welcome. If it needs to be 8 feet, that would work well.
Okay.
You definitely don't want to burn because it'll impact the trees.
And the drainage.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
And really, I think that becomes the next question is drainage and tree preservation and those pieces. We understand the drainage of the site. The full civils have to accommodate both retentions, and maybe this is a good place to step back and tell you some history very briefly about the site itself. There's actually 2 parcels here. When we first looked at the site, the building itself would fit on one, but then there's an awkward piece that would be left. So we wound up actually buying, bookending, or becoming under contract is the best way to put that, under contract between North and South Woodbine so that we could accommodate lots of green area on the front, the north and south ends, detention ponds there, that park-like setting that is referred to in the planning and zoning notes. To accommodate all of that green and drainage and all of those pieces there. Rich, you want to talk real quick about tree preservation and specifically how we're going to care for those things?
Sure. Tree preservation is obviously a very important part of the landscape plan in this particular case, specifically the oaks to the north. And as we prepare the final documentation, the construction drawings, those documents will show the tree preservation plan along with details related to the fencing that will be required to go around the trees. And those will be, of course, shared with staff. They will be approved, and the appropriate distances around the trees will be maintained during the construction period. As it relates to then planting underneath it, they will remove the tree preservation fencing, go in there and grub out underneath it, and to the best they can, do not disturb the roots of the existing trees. You're only talking about a few inches of soil.
One moment. I heard pretty clearly, though, that there's a lot of invasive plants on the buckthorn. So to answer the lady's question, how do you preserve the roots of a large tree when there's so much invasive species below it? How do they do that?
Well, specifically when you go in and remove a tree, they're going to go in and take out
the trees that stay.
Well, how do they protect them?
How do they protect the roots of the trees that are there when they're removing?
Yeah, they're not going to go in and disturb the roots around the tree when they're taking out the invasive trees themselves. They'll do the best they can to cut them down to the ground and then not go in and excavate, which would go into the ground, and it would hurt the actual tree as it stands, the one that they're trying to preserve.
But that's part of the management plan, correct?
Yeah.
They're going to have to manage the buckthorn because it is an invasive
You have to get the buckthorn out of there. You have to get
Right.
that out of there. You got to cut it out.
It's a lot of handwork, basically.
Definitely. They're not, when you're talking about the roots, that you do not want to disturb the roots with heavy equipment.
Right.
So they're not going to go in there with big, huge, heavy equipment and disturb those areas. They're going to be sensitive to taking those out.
Right.
And there's going to be a company that will be hired to do that specific task.
And then there'll be a management plan that'll be put together with regards to the property, long-term maintenance of the property, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Wouldn't you have greater success for long-term management in a setting like this where you have a more green space? Than a lot of times they do protect the big trees, and then there's concrete all around them, or it's somewhat limited. You'd think that their success of survival would be a lot less, whereas here there's more green space. I just would think that you'd have a greater chance of success preserving them with having that much green space, or no?
Right, we're not, the trees that we're preserving are not encased in concrete. Where we're preserving them is in the open space areas.
Okay. Anything else?
What did we miss?
What about the timing for deliveries?
Timing for deliveries, mid-morning deliveries for the most part.
Are you prepared, though, as a condition of approval to have a restriction? And it's always subject to emergencies, I know, so we put that aside. On timing for deliveries, they would not be before a certain hour nor after a certain hour?
I don't know that that can be dictated to us. That has more to do with when things are delivered.
Well, we have a pretty good job of doing it than people dictate to their suppliers when they can show up. So I guess the question is that a condition that you would find acceptable?
If given the option, no, I would rather not.
Okay.
Is it
That's fair
a
enough.
deal killer? I mean, we have to have food delivered to our facilities.
No,
so-
we understand that, but if we're talking about, and I don't know what we've done this before with food stores and things like that, that there's no deliveries for a certain hour. And then,
If you tell me, deliveries between 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock
No,
in
no,
the
no, no, no,
afternoon, I mean,
no.
certainly something that we want to be, again, we want to be good neighbors, and if the proposal is, reasonable to everybody, it certainly makes sense. Again, we don't want deliveries coming at 11 o'clock at night to disturb our residents, and we don't want,
Here comes your partner.
Okay, you're right.
all right.
Charles Hall.
It's 8:30 to 5.
8:30 to 5? That 8:30 to 5 would be acceptable.
Okay. And then for the hours of the generator exercise, same?
Whenever, yeah.
Okay. And are we talking about weekdays?
Yes.
Okay, so Monday through Friday? Okay. Just because sometimes we like to draw on pictures you give us, is there any flexibility in the positioning of the generator to perhaps move it slightly south to be able to landscape around it more to hide it, though not make it invisible, of course? And I think Mr. Calmer's got like one space pushed it down, so you could landscape around it.
Push it one more space? We
Yeah.
can do that.
And then landscape around it?
Yeah. Well, it's already got a masonry wall that'll go around it, shielding it from our neighbors.
So yes, you'll put some more bushes around it.
Yes, we will.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Okay, and then construction timing, you're not looking for any sort of construction outside of village ordinance, I assume? Which I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
Yeah, and we would only deal with that on an emergency basis, so.
Okay, anybody else?
There
Or
there was
Scott?
there was one question that wasn't addressed, and it was Mr. Robbins' question about why is this facility needed in this, in this area, and a facility of this size in particular. If you can, in short, give us a snapshot of how you come to that.
There's a lot of pieces that go into when we evaluate a market, specifically when we're evaluating this site. We look at income levels for people who are, of resident age. We look at people who are with income levels of a certain level, of people who we call adult children, with a certain threshold for qualification. And just to the point of being concise, people who can afford it, adult children whose parents who can afford private care, and that becomes our pool of what age and income qualified population. We've determined that for a particular radius, there are in excess of 2 to 1 beds if we were to include these 70 plus the existing beds in the market. There's twice as much demand as there are actual facilities. You guys talk about autumn leaves and how it's performed in the community. Occupancies are very high. Last I checked, it was 100% with a waiting list, and that was relatively recently. There are folks that we work with in the market who do not have a memory care function to their senior living and don't have anywhere to refer as their residents age and they become memory impaired. They don't have anywhere to refer them, so they wind up going to Highland Park and places well outside of the community. So they've told us, that they're not just a matrix indicator, but a real life on the ground indicator. People saying we need somewhere closer to send people who have a memory care need. Okay. Thank you guys very much.
What we have in this commission is a microphone that needs to be turned on. A standing motion to recommend approval that we then vote on that would go to the village board. The first issue that arises is to recommend approval consistent with the findings set forth in our report as required by section 21.7 of the zoning ordinance to amend the zoning district map of the village of Vernon Hills, to amend the zoning classification on this property from OR&D, Office Research and Development District, to R7 Multifamily Dwelling District. We need a second for just that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion on the rezoning? Okay, if not, we need a roll call.
Mr. Baloo?
Yes.
Ms. Cotton?
Yes.
Mr. Hesner?
Yes.
Mr. Heidner?
Yes.
Mr. Mulcrone?
Yes.
Mr. Gorog?
Yes.
Okay. Secondly, we have a motion to recommend approval of a special use permit to allow development of an assisted living facility for the care of patients with Alzheimer's dementia, along with certain variations for signage. We already have in our packet the 18.3 submitted findings and criteria as well. So we need a second on the special use permit.
Second.
Okay, and before I open, Mr. Kalmar appropriately pointed out that there are a number of conditions of approval in our packet that have been made public. In addition to the conditions for approval on the site, we've added some this evening. Condition 15 would be extension of the fencing along the entire, I guess it'd be west property line, with an increase in height to 8 feet of that fence. 16 would be the architectural elevation changes as noted this evening. 17 would be the agreement by the petitioner that the generator exercise would be between 8:30 and 5, Monday through Friday, within that time frame. 18 would be the generator would be moved, we're describing it as one space or stall south with, as I think we described it, additional bushes or landscaping. And then 19 is that the petitioner also indicated that the delivery timing would be 8:30 to 5, Monday through Friday for deliveries to the facility, exempting, of course, emergencies and the like, and we have weather issues here. I'll just note, someone asked about backup alarms. We don't really control that. The state of Illinois does, so we don't have much choice there. And we also don't really control where lights go in Milwaukee. IDOT does.
And I guess I would suggest an additional condition with regards to tree preservation, with regards to on the property, and the development of a long-term maintenance plan by the petitioner that would be reviewed and approved by the village prior to issuance of a building permit.
We did talk about that, yes. So that'd be 20. Okay, now we need a second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, I have a question for John.
Mhm.
What is the typical hours of delivery required, allowed by the village?
Honestly, we don't have hours. What we've done typically in instances where projects are adjacent to residential areas, we've put hours on there. For instance, the Lowe's Mariano's, I think the number is 7 a.m. So from that standpoint, that's typically what we've done. But in most instances, there aren't delivery restrictions. The way we do address it is we use the construction hours, and typically those are 7 a.m. on the weekend or weekdays and 8 a.m. on the weekday on Saturday, and then no work on Sunday.
So they're voluntarily being more restrictive?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Morris, are the conditions you just listed tied to request number 2, or are they separate for 2, 3, and 4?
They'll be included in 2, 3, and 4.
Okay. are we going over them individually, or they're all as one?
No, we're doing just two right now. We're just voting on two.
Okay.
The special use permit.
Right. Because some of the items you listed were tied to separately to 3 and to 4.
They're going to be there too, yeah.
Okay.
It's easier than just trying to bring them out one by one.
Okay.
Because, right. We make John's job easier there.
No, Lisa's job. easier.
Lisa's, right. Okay, any more discussion on the special use permit, subject to the, what are now 20 conditions, I believe? Yes. Okay, we need a roll call?
Mr. Heidner,
Yes.
Mr. Hesner,
Yes.
Ms. Cotton,
Yes.
Mr. Baloo,
Yes.
Mr. Mulcrone,
Yes.
Mr. Gorog.
Yes.
Okay. Third, we have a motion to recommend preliminary and final site and landscape plan approval, subject to, once again, the conditions of approval and the 20 specific ones we just discussed. We need a second for that motion.
Second?
Any discussion?
The only point I want to make is that, once again, the developer is going to put up as many signs as they can. I'm not really in favor of 2 signs, but I'm not going to vote against the motion just for that reason.
Okay, anybody else? Do we need a roll call?
Mr. Gorog,
Yes.
Mr. Mulcrone,
Yes.
Mr. Heidner,
Yes.
Mr. Hesner,
Yes.
Ms. Cotton,
Yes.
Mr. Baloo.
Yes.
Okay. And finally, we have a motion to recommend approval of the preliminary and final architectural elevations, and that's, of course, as amended or changed this evening, subject to the other conditions of approval. We need a second for that.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion with regard to that? Do we need a roll call?
No.
No?
One second.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Jeff, you wanna exercise that view about those dormers and those elevations?
Yeah, I just think that the elevations need a little bit more work and study, some of the proportions and detailing.
Seems like, the points that you were making were good. And maybe a suggestion that the petitioner could work with staff to help enhance those elevations. Acceptable, John?
Seconded?
Oh, we don't have a second.
Oh, we don't have a second.
Yes, we did.
Do we? I'm sorry, I missed.
Was it you,
Sorry.
Jim, or Jerry?
Either one. We both
He
did.
can have it.
Okay.
So who gets it?
We have one and
Would you give it to?
Mr. Heidner.
So would you accept as an addition to the motion that was seconded, an additional with regard to this condition, that the petitioner work with staff regarding the elevations as
Yes, but
discussed?
I'm not sure that staff understands what.
I will work with Jeff specifically on this and
Okay.
Scott.
How's that?
So,
Okay. Okay, now any additional discussion? Okay, so we need a roll call with regard to the architectural elevation motion.
Mr. Baloo.
Yes.
Ms. Cotton.
Yes.
Mr. Hesner.
Yes.
Mr. Heidner.
Yes.
Mr. Mulcrone.
Yes.
Mr. Gorog.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else we
Okay.
need on this one?
That's it for tonight.
Okay. Next on our agenda this evening is, we have no development reviews. It looks like we have no additional discussions. Approval of the minutes from the August 14th, 2013 meeting, which are in the packet.
A move to approve is presented.
Okay, need a second?
Second.
Okay, we can do that by acclamation. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And Jerry abstains? Okay, that's approved. Anything else we need to know?
We do not have another meeting scheduled for the remainder of the year, and I do not anticipate seeing you all. So have a happy Thanksgiving and a wonderful holiday season, and we'll be back in January with several items, I think, including, I think, looking at McDonald's renovations there, possibly Menards at Greg's Landing, and several other projects that are kind of warming up in the bullpen.
I thought Menards moved to Mundelein.
No, they closed in Mundelein.
They closed.
Well, I thought they were going to move to a different location. They didn't?
No, they are looking at us now. So,
What's going on with the mall?
So you're gonna-
the mall is actually, the southeast and southwest entrances should be done in the next couple of weeks. Dave & Buster's is under renovation right now. As soon as the southwest entrance is complete, then Maggiano's will do the renovation, start the renovation in the old Ruby Tuesdays location. On the northeast side, you will see, begin to see construction fencing going up and possible utility relocation out near the Ring Road, working back towards the building during the holidays. And then once the holidays conclude, that will start in earnest with building construction starting on the new theater as rapidly after they complete that as possible. So,
Basically, they're waiting till the holiday shopping season.
yeah, and they're behind on their schedule, quite frankly. They were supposed to have had the utilities done and relocated already by now, and they're 60 days behind their schedule right now. So I'm anticipating that delay will extend beyond the holiday of 2014. So, no, it's a Westfield project. Yeah,
Right.
it's a Westfield project.
What about Walmart?
Walmart is still going through their entitlement process in Mundelein right now. I don't know if that's complete or not. I anticipate that they'll start construction on their new store, from what I understand, summer of next year, with a late spring, early summer of 15 opening, and then a closing of our store. So,
Any interest in that location? I know it's kind of
too
it's
early.
a long way off, yeah.
We've had some discussions, and I don't know yet whether Walmart will lease that property or whether they will sell it ultimately. And so we'll kind of watch and see. I've had some conversations with the real estate people already, and if I had to guess, what'll happen with that building is it'll probably be divided up into a couple of spaces, kind of like what happened to the old Kmart. So we'll kind of watch and see, but we'll be reaching out to them, I would say probably middle of next year, to begin to really get a sense on what Walmart's going to do with the property. So we actually looked at that site to see if it might fit for Menards, but it's too small. So you guys will be, I think, pretty busy next year on multiple fronts. I think as you all know, I'm going to assume the role as village manager at the end of January. So things will be busy from my end on multiple fronts and layers and like, and we'll be talking about replacing me and how we're going to do that and how this will ultimately impact you all and going forward. So I won't disappear on you all, but we'll see how that's going to go going forward. So that's all I have.
Okay. We need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor with that one?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, we're adjourned. Good night.